Okay, so there's definitely a couple ways to do number 5. I'm not going to do number 5, but just know that there's a couple of different ways to do this. You could start by switching everything to sines and cosines. You could break apart the fraction and do 1 over secant minus tangent squared over secant squared. I think that might be a nice way to do it. But I'm not going to do number 5. I'm going to leave that one for you guys. Same thing with number 6. I'm going to leave number 6. Number 6 is kind of easier. But I'm definitely going to do number 7. So number 7, solve cosine x minus 2 cosine x sine x is equal to 0 between 0 and 2 pi. All right, so if I'm looking at this, the first thing I notice is that both of these terms have a cosine in it. Now, we cannot divide by a cosine because it's a function, so we factor out the cosine instead. So we can't divide out a function, but we can factor it out, and that makes sure that we get our answer. Okay, so I have cosine x times 1 minus 2 sine of x is equal to 0. So I have two little mini trig problems. Cosine of x is equal to 0, and 1 minus 2 sine x is equal to 0. So cosine of x is equal to 0. This occurs at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. All right. And then 1 minus 2 sine of x, that would end up being sine of x is equal to 1/2. And that occurs at pi over 6, or your 30 degrees. And then in the second quadrant, that occurs at 5 pi over 6. So we have these four answers. Now, just as a heads up, just so that we think about this again, if you divide it out by cosine, let's say you divided the whole thing by cosine, it goes away. You don't get half of the answers. So that's why making sure we factor it instead of dividing is so important, because if we just divide, we're going to lose half of our results. So pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2 are our answers. All right. You guys are really good at this when I checked your homework. So this is simplifying. It looks a little beastly, but use your sum and difference formulas to simplify that down. There's a prove it question here at the bottom. Couple of different ways to do it, but remember this is proving it. All right. So make sure one side equals the other. It really isn't too bad. But I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do number 9. So I have sine of a plus a is equal to 2 sine a cosine a. All right. So I'm going to use my left-hand side here and simplify. So sine of a plus a is sine of a cosine of a plus sine a cosine a. All right. You're like, that's a little silly. But there we go. There you have it. That's 2 sine a cosine a. That's also, by the way, I got ahead of myself, sine of 2a. So this is all true. So just a sum and difference formula for your sine and cosines, simplifying it down, and just as a reminder that sine of 2a is 2 sine a cosine of a. So I'm going to let you guys be with the rest of this. Make sure you take a look at the Unit 5 practice as well. I actually think the review is harder than the practice. So if you're not sure or if you need more help, that's where I would start looking first. And like I said, these keys are going to be up there and posted for you guys to take a look at.